Ever since the Chinese Mars rover Chang'e 5 landed on the moon, there has been growing evidence that this celestial body is very different from what we have long imagined, especially in its depths. The moon seems to be hiding treasures we had no idea about. Rover's shocking discovery could change our world forever. What exactly has Rover discovered deep inside the moon, and why could this discovery herald the end of climate catastrophe? Stay with us, as we're about to change the way you look at this celestial body forever. The Chang'e 5 mission landed on the moon on December 1, 2020, after a 23-day journey through space. The two-seat probe was launched from the Wenchang Cosmodrome in China's Hainan province. This is the same site from which Chang'e 3's predecessor probes, numerous satellites, and component supply flights for the Chinese space station were launched. After successfully separating from the orbiter, the Chang'e 5 landing module landed in a lunar region that scientists call Oceanus Procellarum. This region near the lunar equator is a vast flat area on the far side of the moon, characterized by extreme latitude. The goal of the Chang'e 5 mission was very clearly defined. The nearly 8-ton probe was to collect samples from the lunar surface and deliver lunar rock back to Earth for the first time in 40 years. For the first time in human history, this mission was to retrieve samples from the deep layers of the moon. In recent years, scientists have begun to realize that the moon may be very different from what we have long thought. It is even possible that the moon harbors a large reservoir of mineral resources that could solve our energy problem. After successful drilling, the landing module sent the samples back to its orbiter via the ascent module, and the return trip to Earth began after just 14 Earth days. This mission was celebrated worldwide as a great achievement of Chinese space science. The return of the samples was eagerly awaited by international researchers. We can already say the following: the hopes of gaining revolutionary new knowledge about the moon have been more than realized. On December 17, 2020, the return capsule entered the Earth's atmosphere and successfully landed in the sparsely populated expanse of Mongolia. As soon as the samples were secured, the experts got to work. It was eagerly anticipated whether the drilling would confirm existing theories about the moon's creation or whether the lunar interior would reveal a completely different truth. Scientists believe that a planet the size of Mars collided with the Earth more than 4 billion years ago, resulting in the formation of the moon. During the collision, part of the Earth broke off and was covered in molten rock. Until now, it has been assumed that the temperature was so high that all the water vaporized permanently. The moon was thought to be a parched celestial body that is slowly shrinking, or better said, drying up. In recent months, telescopes and probes have discovered large deposits of water ice in craters near the lunar poles. The discourse has shifted, and everyone has begun to wonder, where did the ice on the moon come from, and why has it never been noticed in more than 50 years of intense study of the moon? NASA plans to send astronauts near the poles in the next 10 years as part of the Artemis mission. Once there, astronauts must determine if the water deposits on the moon can be utilized. At a planned permanent station on the moon, water could provide for humans, grow plants, and be used to make fuel. Now, a discovery made by Chang'e 5 could completely scuttle those plans, as the rover has discovered a seemingly impossible amount of water on a small, inconspicuous celestial body. And it's everywhere on the moon. In the drill samples, researchers from the Chinese Academy of Sciences found an unusually high density of tiny glass particles. These tiny glass crystals were likely formed when meteorites fell on the moon. The comet's capture could also have brought water to the moon, which is now frozen at the poles. Upon closer inspection, the impacted glass beads revealed another secret. They found water inside the beads. Each particle contains just a tiny portion of water, but en masse, the water deposits on the moon are huge. Can you imagine that? Each balloon brought back from the moon contains 2,000 micrograms of water. The authors of the study estimate that 270 billion tons of water in beads could be literally scattered across the moon in this way. The likelihood that these glassy particles are evenly distributed throughout the moon is high. After all, the entire moon has been bombarded by comets, asteroids, and meteorites over billions of years. It follows that the moon is saturated with water from the equator to the poles. Therefore, future manned missions to the moon do not have to land at the poles and then laboriously try to dispose of the water, ice there. Water from these balls can be easily separated by heating, thus providing lunar settlers with fresh water anywhere on the celestial body. In further research, Chinese scientists were even able to demonstrate that the water encased inside the lunar crystals was once produced by the sun. According to the theory, positively charged hydrogen atoms from the solar wind snuck into the glass beads and mixed with the oxygen they contain. Examination of the different types of hydrogen atoms in the samples showed that these beads can also release some of their hydrogen charge at high temperatures when they are heated by solar radiation. The total amount of water wealth in the form of impact beads is currently estimated to be about 298.7 billion tons. In 2010, NASA estimated the water quota at the Moon's North Pole at 661 million short tons. Even compared to our Earth, the abundance of water is impressive. The Earth is estimated to contain approximately 1.47 quintillion short tons of water. Now you might be wondering, could there ever come a time when this lunar ice melts or the Moon could become a landscape with rivers, lakes, or entire oceans due to chemical or mechanical changes in the water glass beads? Of course, we've asked ourselves this question too, and researched it. Although such ideas would be fantastic, unfortunately, it is unlikely that it would be possible to let water run over the surface of the Moon. The Moon has virtually no atmosphere, extreme temperatures, and only very low atmospheric pressure. Water can only liquefy under certain conditions, and there are none on the Moon, since the Moon is not particularly dense and has only a very weak magnetic field. It is also not expected to change here in the future. Other things besides water have been found in glass beads. The latest exciting discovery could soon trigger a real breakthrough to lunar exploration. The samples collected by the Chinese space probe are unique. Taken from deep underground, they are about 1 billion years older than all the samples collected from the surface by astronauts during Apollo program. It is likely that these glass beads were formed mostly in the last 2 billion years. Creating the necessary temperatures requires an impact size roughly comparable to the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs some 68 million years ago. As a relatively small celestial body, the Moon has been subjected to massive cosmic impacts throughout its evolutionary history, and it's amazing that it has survived these bombardments so well. Researchers believe this is due in part to its low density and thick layer of dust. The Moon's turbulent life may have produced a whole range of features from which we can benefit greatly in the future. The Chang'e 5 spacecraft has discovered another crystal in the lunar rock, and it could prove significant because this lunar crystal is made of a substance that was previously completely unknown. The researchers were surprised when they noticed that this structure contains a crucial component for nuclear fusion. It is worth noting at this point that the Earth's energy problem will be solved once we have the capability for nuclear fusion. So far, we have used the principle of nuclear fission to meet our enormous energy needs. However, the radioactive waste produced in this process has become a massive problem. In nuclear fusion, light atomic nuclei are fused into heavier nuclei. This releases much more energy than nuclear fission, and the residue contains no radiation. For decades, physicists around the world have been working on this technology, but so far without success, because the pressure, and thus the energy required to make the nuclei fuse, exceeds the energy gain. The problem would be solved instantly if we could find a mineral or atom that inherently has an increased readiness for fusion. And that's exactly what has just happened. The isolated phosphate mineral was named chang'e. Future research at the Beijing Uranium Geology Research Institute will show whether the helium-3 isotope, which is ready for fusion, can be used on Earth. So, could mining on the Moon soon be underway? The Chang'e 6 mission, starting in 2024, is supposed to collect additional samples from the far side of the Moon and bring them back to Earth. Developments are currently being watched closely. And of course, NASA has also taken notice. Experts have calculated that the US could generate energy for a year using about 27.6 short tons of helium-3. This is equivalent to the cargo volume of the space shuttle. The estimated economic value of helium-3 from the Moon is $3 billion per short ton. In fact, this discovery could cause a gold rush and attract many strange companies to the Moon. Some big energy corporations have already shown interest in NASA to invest in future space missions. This could mean that NASA's Artemis program will get a major boost. We're going to say goodbye to you now. And lastly, what do you think about the Moon as a resource for the Earth?